Welcome to the Williamsville Public Library Museum. Today is Wednesday, September 20th, 2023, and we're here talking to Joyce Barregarye about her time here in Williamsville with the Williamsville State Bank. So Joyce, thank you for joining us. Let's just start with the basics. Williamsville has grown quite a bit, has changed quite a bit, and you've been here your whole life. So when you reflect on that, what do you think? How do you think Williamsville's changed?
Other than getting larger, I don't think it's changed. It's still a beautiful small town, and the people are still very friendly for the most part. I love living here.
Do you think people who live out in the country have it a little differently than you did when you were growing up out in the country?
Absolutely.
How's that?
Well, computers and networking, cars.
Sure.
When I grew up, there was one car or one truck in the family, and
Sure.
now I think every child has one too. I think that with the high school we have here in Williamsville, the school district, it's very active, and it involves anyone that wants to be involved.
Is there something you miss as you think back to how things have changed over the years?
No, not really, other than the people. It's people I miss. It was a big change when I retired. I mean, I was used to going to work and you were with people every day. It was an adjustment for me. But after you're home about 6 months, you find out how busy you can get volunteering.
We're at the Williamsville Library Museum, so we're obviously talking about local history. When you think about Williamsville history, what do you want to see preserved?
I think the history, and I think the library's doing a good job. Our boxcar museum started, it was great. I think the old buildings, they've done a great job of keeping those up, and just how clean the town is. I'm very proud to be a citizen here.
So between the Village of Williamsville, their public works guys do an amazing job, and the
Absolutely.
Garden Club, and all of that community involvement
Yes,
has
the
really...
Garden Club is, I just can't believe how much they do in a year.
Yeah, it's very impressive. Speaking of impressive, I mean, you've had a lot of people in your life around that you've been able to look up to. Who has inspired you? I mean, obviously I'm thinking your parents, but anyone else who's inspired you?
I don't know if you'd call it inspired. People that have been a big influence, and of course my parents, my grandparents. I had aunts that I loved dearly, and uncles. People right here in Williamsville I often think of and have such good memories is Wyatt Patterson. Such a gentle soul and such a good man. Ellsworth, perfect example of that family. When my first husband passed away, I would go to work, and all of a sudden their young son and grandson would come up and say, "I need the keys to your car." They would pick up my car and bring it back, and I kept saying, when I of course called Wyatt Pawpaw, I said, what did you want my car for? "Well, we took and changed the oils and checked your tires for you." They were just that kind of family. Now I would offer to pay, but no, as long as Pawpaw lived, my oil was changed, because they had a guy that did that and he needed work.
So was that Ellsworth and George that would...
George would come, would be the one that they'd send down to pick up my car.
Okay.
He was in high school then.
Okay.
Another person, Gladys Council. I never know how to describe Gladys. She was very outspoken and stuff, but her and her husband Toonie, I don't think people realize what they did for other kids in the community. They never had any children, but they were always quietly helping some child. And then she had retired from the bank when I started there, but as time went along, she needed some assistance, and she asked me to help her with her banking and stuff. And Gladys and I talked a lot, and she talked a lot about the values that you should have as a person. She was always very complimentary to how she thought that I worked with the customers at the bank. I love Gladys. So many families in town that you knew and that our parents was friends with. But I think that probably, like I said, Wyatt Patterson, another guy that, in fact, I think is Harold Carter's brother, Les Carter. I met him through the bank. He was a really true gentleman. I always enjoyed conversations with him.
So you were lucky to have a lot of people around that you could look up to and learn things from. And
like I said, too, like my first husband died, I had an uncle that lived here in town, Norman Poe. If there was ever anything he thought I needed, he was right there to help you. Lee's mother, Aunt Opal, she'd come by and check on me once in a while too when I moved back to Williamsville. But that's what I said, I had a very close family.
So all of those family and friends helped you accomplish quite a bit in your life here in Williamsville. Is there anything in particular that you're really proud of, something that you're most proud of? when you think of your time here?
I just was a small part of a big wheel, I always felt like.
So would you say your family perhaps is one of your bigger accomplishments or something you're most proud of in terms
Yes,
of your boys?
my children, I think that they've been successful. They're both retired young. My oldest son worked for the state of Illinois. He did the investments for the state of Illinois.
Okay.
I was always very proud of him.
So kind of followed in your footsteps a little bit there?
Yeah, and he was a bank examiner.
Okay.
Before. Very, very proud of my children and grandchildren.
So when you think of your kids and your grandkids and like I said, nieces and nephews and so forth, what do you want them to think about when they think of Joyce? What do you want them to remember or think of?
Hopefully that I was kind. My granddaughter always said, I never read a Bible until I kept seeing my grandma's on her table and I asked her how to do it. That made an impression that maybe that was a good thing. I think that's it. I've never been much, I don't think, to preach to them, tell them. I think they learn more by seeing.
Mm-hmm. So when you think about the things they've observed and watched you do, what do you think they've picked up on, or what do you, maybe in terms of advice, is there anything in particular you'd like to give them as advice, steer them in the right path?
I always tell my one grandson, he got a part-time job and he didn't really care for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, always remember, try everything once. If you get an opportunity, then you find out what you don't want to do for the rest of your life. But always be honest and kind.
And maybe figure out what you want to do based on what you don't want to do.
What you don't want to do. Sometimes that's the way we have to do it. And work hard. Hard work never hurt anybody.
So some lessons that you learned that you'd like to pass along and hopefully they'll pick up on. All
I
right.
don't think so.
Anything else about Williamsville, your time here, that you'd like to reflect on or share?
Like I said, I like it. The only thing I probably think that I'd still like to see is maybe some type of a convenience store. I don't know, like a Dollar General or something. As I've aged, it'd be nice to be able to have a store here where I didn't have to drive 5 miles, that you could pick up a loaf of bread or
Right.
a can of soup.
Right.
And I've found that I can do that by driving to Athens or Riverton to a dollar store. I mean,
Right.
I don't have to always go to a grocery store.
Because when you were younger, were you able to do that here in Williamsville?
We had a drugstore in Williamsville.
And did you have grocery stores?
And we had a grocery store. In fact, we had 2 when I was real young, and then of course we had the IGA that was built over by the bank, the new bank building. I miss that. I understand Williamsville probably can't afford a grocery store. That's why I think about the convenience store.
Kind of how things have changed in terms of when you were growing up, perhaps people were working and living here, and now it seems like people live in Williamsville, but they work elsewhere.
Yes, we're a bedroom community.
Kind of changed the business dynamics of
Right.
what kind of businesses we can sustain here as a small community. Well, thank you so much, Joyce. I appreciate your time. Appreciate you coming in and reflecting and sharing your memories with us. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.